Hi.
Okay, well, I think we're ready to get started. I'm Edwin Rutsch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy and founder of the Empathy Tent. And what we have here is the beginning of a series of empathy circles that is sponsored by the Empathy Tent for building a culture of empathy. So we're looking at bridging the political divides. And this means that we want everyone to be heard to their satisfaction, to be seen and acknowledged, and to foster a constructive dialogue and really to build a culture of empathy. And we're trying to scale these up. We want to take these empathy circles. We'd like to hold hundreds, thousands of these empathy circles, and also to train people in how to facilitate them. And our goal is, we're here in the United States, and there's people from the UK, but is to take these to Congress. We want our representatives to, congressional representatives to do empathy circles with each other across the political divide. And also, if there's viewers, if you're a viewer here, we invite you to join us in future empathy circles. We're meeting every Saturday right now. And this is sort of an empathy cafe, so anyone can come, and we'll divide into smaller groups to hold smaller group circles. And in a little bit, we'll divide into those groups. And you can visit empathytent.com or empathycircle.com for more information on how to take part and become trained as a facilitator as well. We'll be starting some facilitation training later in January. So to begin with, we just want to go around and just hear who's here. And I would just do like short introductions, like your name, where you're located, and your political affiliation. And I'll just model that. I'm Edwin Rutsch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area near Berkeley. And politically, I grew up conservative, moved to the progressive side, and have now moved to the empathic side. So with that, I'll just choose people. David, you're on top of the screen here. So if you'd like to just do a quick intro.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, my name is David. I live in San Francisco, and for all intents and purposes, I relate as a conservative.
Okay, Rona and Sophia.
So hi, I'm Rona. I live in Milton Keynes in England, and I guess politically, I would be Labour.
I'm Sophie. I live in London, in England, and I guess if I had to fill in one of those things, which I have done actually recently, and I came out really, really, really left and really, really, really libertarian as opposed to authoritarian. But actually, like you, I don't like being defined by that. It's more that I guess that's what aligns more with the values that for me are just about making sure that people get their needs met. That's it.
Okay. Really. Thank you. Tyler?
My name is Tyler Morris. I live in San Francisco in the Mission District in the city proper. I guess I align conservative more on the right. Yeah.
Art?
Hi, everybody. My name is Art Burns. I'm in Denver, Colorado. And I'm a little confused as far as my affiliation. I lean towards progressive, but I think I have certain libertarian views also. Kind of try to see good in all of it.
Okay, thanks. Julia?
Hi, I'm Julia, and I live in the Netherlands. I am a member of the Party of the Animals, and it's actually left.
Okay, thank you. Evan?
Hi, I'm Evan McGore. I grew up in Long Island, New York. I'm sort of traveling around now, and I still would kind of align myself as liberal, but also been studying more of a needs-based approach and sort of making sure everyone gets their needs met, similar, as was said.
Okay. Yuko?
Hi, I was born and raised in Japan, but I live in Portland, Oregon right now. Not Portland, Ashland. So I guess I consider myself more to the left, to maybe socialist. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Claire? There you
Sorry,
go,
that took a
unmuted.
moment.
Yeah, it's good to mute. It's great to mute if you're not speaking, just for background noise, so thanks for that.
You're welcome. I'm Claire, and I am English, but I'm also American, and I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I would say the names don't feel accurate because my behavior is conservative, meaning that I wish to conserve the planet and resources and relationships. I don't see that. But by definition, I would therefore come under progressive, I think, in terms of ideologies that are actually, living.
Okay, thanks. Corey?
Hi, I'm Corey. I grew up in Connecticut and in a very far right family. I now live in Chico, California, and I consider myself far left, progressive, although I'm definitely, over the past couple of years of learning, been favoring a more needs-based approach.
Joy? Oh, that's, thank you. Joy?
Hi, yeah, okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm the mute. Yeah, so I'm Joy, I'm based in London, and I don't know how to, it's very hard to I don't like the label thing as well, because people do then, pigeonhole you, but I would say eco-politics, very broadly speaking, so politics for the planet and all the creatures living and non-living on it. So that's kind of very broad approach. So I don't know if that would broadly be green politics, I suppose.
Okay, thanks. Megan?
And feminist, obviously, thrown in with that, yeah.
Great.
Needless to say, but yeah.
I'm Megan. I have lived in various towns and cities throughout Northern California throughout my life, mostly Chico, California. And I feel like I'm resonating right now with the word radical, which to me, the word rad comes from the word for root. The Latin, the root of it is rad, like in radish, also comes from root, which means I want to get to the root of things. So.
Okay, thank you. And this is, we call this an empathy circle. It's actually, these are, anyone can come, and we have a whole group. I never know how many people are going to be here. And so it's sort of like an empathy cafe that we're gonna, and I'll just introduce how we do an empathy circle, and then we're going to divide into smaller groups, and hopefully in every group there'll be someone that is familiar with the empathy circle process. So I hope everyone had a chance to kind of read the instructions for how to do an empathy circle, but I'll review them here. So it's a rather simple process, and what we do is we'll divide into groups of 4, maybe 5. And one person will speak, and they will select who they're going to speak to. So if I was the speaker, I would say, well, David, I'd like to speak to you. And then I would speak, share something, and then David would reflect. Periodically, I would pause, and David would reflect back what he's hearing me say, to the point where I feel like I'm really heard and understood. So he would reflect back to me, and then I would check if it's okay, if he's accurate. And then I would continue speaking some more, and then he would reflect back his understanding of what he heard me say until the time is up. We're going to have 5-minute turns, or until you feel like you're fully heard. Maybe you've spoken for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and you don't have anything else to say. You can just to indicate that you're done speaking, you can say, I feel fully heard, and then it would be the listener's turn to become the speaker, and then they will select the person that they want to speak to them, and that person reflects back what's being said, and we just go for the time allotted, and we're going to have about an hour and a half for each circle, and then a quarter till at the end, we'll convene, come back into this group, and then do a little bit of a shared debrief. And some tips is, let's see, so as a speaker, one tip is pause often so the listener can reflect back what they're hearing you say, because if you keep going on and on, it's a lot for the listener to be able to comprehend and to be able to reflect back. And as I said, when you're done speaking, you can say, I fully heard, and that indicates that it's your turn, that your turn is over. As the listener, you're just trying to reflect back your understanding of what the person has said, and you're not asking questions, you're not putting your own ideas and stuff in there. You're just trying to convey your understanding of what the person has said. And if you're the listener and it becomes a lot to kind of hear, you can ask to pause. You can say, oh, can you just pause for a second? Let me reflect back what you have said. So hopefully everyone read the instructions, maybe has seen a sample. So that'll make it a little bit easier. If you feel a little bit of anxiety, about, getting it right, it's okay. There's no right and wrong. You just keep going with it, and you get more and more comfortable with the process. So with that, go ahead.
Should it be about politics or about anything?
Oh yeah, so the topic is, how do we bridge the political divide? So that's going to be what are your concerns about the political divides, and how might we bridge those divides? And but then you can always speak about whatever's alive for you too. Like if there's something else that you want to talk about that's important, you can always speak about whatever you have energy around. So that will be, that's the gist, that's the topic. And since we had this simple topic of how do we bridge divides because of the holidays, right? We're trying to get people together on the holidays. Other times we have more kind of contentious, even more contentious topics. So with that, I'm going to divide into, let me see, we have 11 participants. So
actually, just one thing now is that Nick, my friend's just arrived. So there will be, it might be a real pain because there'll be probably 3 of us on one computer, which would skew the groups a bit, wouldn't it? So is that going to be an issue, do you think?
No, that'll be, it's easy. It's easier when everybody has their own computer.
Yeah, we're just at Rona's house at the moment. And we
right. Oh, it'll work. We'll make it. We'll have it work. So we'll divide into 3 groups.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. You can answer it later if you don't want to answer it now. You said at other times it might be more contentious topics. Just could you give a little example? Like what?
Well, we could,
else?
in the United States, we could have the topic be, do we build the wall? Do we build the, whatever? I'm sure Tyler and David would have great contentious topics.
Yeah, I would align as an anti-feminist, so I don't think there'll be any shortage of contention.
Who's that? Tyler. Who
Tyler.
just spoke?
Yeah,
Tyler.
that's Tyler.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Okay.
feminism is become destructive, so I don't think we'll have any problem with contention.
Okay, yeah. So
Okay.
so let's see. Okay, so this is the next time this is Evan or Megan or Art. I know that you're, been doing more of these, and so we're going to need to, in the future, this is kind of a little bit tricky here, is the dividing into groups. So I'm going to, we need like another person for kind of helping with these groups. So let's see, we have Rona. Okay, Art, Tyler.
Do you mean a person to help like keep track of time or?
Oh
help
yeah, so,
facilitate?
okay, Megan, will you facilitate one group and Evan another and be timekeepers? So I'll put you each into a separate group.
Wait, do you mean facilitate, like be the main facilitator?
Yeah, just to kind of hold the process. It's just, I mean, you're familiar with the process, right? Or should I?
Yeah, I wasn't really prepared. I mean, I wasn't expecting to show up in that role today. So,
Okay.
I mean, I always try to demonstrate like shared leadership and this kind of thing if it's needed. But
Okay. So
yeah.
I could have Art, or would you? You've done several of these, so.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay, great.
I just have to figure out if I can do the timer on my phone. I'm going to test it right now because I'm on my phone now. So just give me a second.
Okay, this is.
I can be timekeeper for one group, but I don't know about facilitator.
Okay, then.
So maybe Art can facilitate and David can keep time.
Art.
It seems like Art disappears when he goes to a different app.
Okay, Art, so Corey. And so in the future, I'm going to definitely need 2 people for this part because we need one person to be divided. We have these breakout rooms, so it's a little, need a second person to just do the breakout room. So Rona, put you in there with Evan, and then the rest. Do we have everyone? Megan? 3. I think that's it. Okay, so
is it going to record automatically for each group?
Oh, it won't. It'll just record the group that I'm in. So
okay.
If you want to record, you can hit the. I can give you kind of record permissions. I didn't expect so many people today, so this is great. Allow record. Okay, great. And so we're going to go into our breakout groups, quarter till, and so Rona before Evan, Claire, move to room 1, and David, Corey, and Art. So I think this is, I have this, we'll see how this works. Okay, here we go. We have the great breakout groups, and let's see, Megan, Julie, oh, there we go. Oh, Okay, here we think we're all set. Not join, Joy. Oh, sorry, assign to, 1 second, sorry about this. Breakout group 1, assign to breakout room 2, breakout group 3.
You're muted. I don't know if you want to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you.
And Edwin.
Okay, great. I think have everyone assigned, I hope. Art, Corey, David. Okay.
I was kind of hoping Joy, especially because she. Oh well. Maybe I'll switch groups later.
Well,
I think
Okay.
a lot of people aren't familiar with what an anti-feminist is or why that would be an okay thing. A lot of people, I think, in this group.
Okay, so we can start with the. Megan, would you be willing to keep time? Do you have a clock?
Yeah. So do you want me to?
5 minutes.
Starting with. Okay. I would like to give people a warning maybe when it's 3, and then I'll hold it up when it's 5 too, like I've seen you do before. I'll do my best. I don't have like a separate timekeeping device other than the phone I'm using, so I'll have to keep like pressing it to get it to show me the time.
I could, Megan, if you're more comfortable, I could probably use my timer, like this kind of time.
Yeah, if you have like better technology for it, that would be easier for me right now.
Okay, we could get started if someone would like to speak to me. Our topic is how might we bridge the political divides, and you can go in any direction that you want. Yep.
Edwin, I just want to establish the timing thing. So I've got this. I just want to check. So if I press start and it gets to 5 minutes, do I just raise my hand to let the other person?
You can write on a white piece of paper if you have it, or you can raise your hand. Just hold up, like a sign, like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so we can get started. Someone can speak to me just to get the ball rolling, and then I'll kind of model it.
I had something I got pretty jazzed up about this week I'd like to talk about.
Okay.
So Edwin, you know that I drive for Lyft here in San Francisco. I gave a ride to a 15-year-old girl who was being beaten by one of her 2 mothers. And the way that the state handles that currently is that they put them in therapy and they keep the child with the abusive parent in that case. Ooh, that brought up a lot of shit for me.
Okay, so there's something that you're really, want to talk about.
Abusive mothers.
Yeah, abusive mothers.
I have an abusive mother. I grew up with an abusive mother. She no longer speaks to me. And I feel that on the larger political spectrum, talking about women as being powerful and capable of abuse is kind of off limits.
Okay, so you're as a Lyft driver, you picked up a young girl who's being abused by her mother, and this whole topic of abuse by mothers?
Mothers
is really really a important topic, or has a lot of energy, or is.
Oh yeah, my mother was abusive. I've talked to you about it. I don't think anybody else here knows my story, but I was born here in San Francisco in 1983, and my mother decided that I was gay, so she raised me female and homosexual, which obviously no child has a sexuality, but I've basically spent the rest of my adult life reclaiming my masculinity. My mother, rather than participate in this, acknowledge this, or have anything to do with this, completely disowned me, and she hasn't spoken to me in several years. So a lot of my personal issues that I know that I'm bringing into the situation are about, she essentially hides behind, men are bad, I'm just a poor little woman, and look at how terrible my son is, and there's no acknowledgement of the abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that happening on a national scale, that we can't talk about women being powerful and capable of abusing men.
So this topic of women being able to abuse men, being powerful, and that's and being potentially being abusive, that's not a topic that's talked about nationally. And you've
not potentially being abusive, being abusive.
Oh, being abusive, and that you see that it's not being talked about, and this is like, yeah.
That's a major hot button issue for me. Yeah, I feel heard.
Okay, is there more? You still have?
Nope. That's pretty much the whole thing. The whole thing comes down to my mother abused me. I've spent a lot of time and energy getting myself to a place where I'm okay with that, and I can talk about that. And the fact that men's abuses are being addressed on a national scale, but when we attempt to address women's abuses, can't talk about women. Women don't do anything bad. It's like, well, wait a second. That's not true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that you're seeing that there's sort of this national dialogue that men can be abusive, women, and that you're seeing that women can be abusive, and that can't be talked about, and that's just a hot button topic for you because you've experienced it personally.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you
and then
feel
when
her.
I see it, when I see it with something like that girl, we were relating because she had been sent away to the wilderness programs, and she was sort of in a lot of the similar conflict with her parents, but the system was keeping her in the abusive environment, and it's really upsetting for me to see.
Mm-hmm. So it's really upsetting because you're seeing that this
That was what happened to
little
me.
girl.
I bucked and kicked until I got sent away because I couldn't stand the abusive environment. And then after that, I joined the Marines, which everybody else here doesn't know. But yeah, like I said, I spent my 20s reclaiming my masculinity and getting to a place where I can be okay as a man. I can feel okay.
Mm-hmm. So you felt you had this abuse and that you
I had to break out of that environment.
To break out of it. So you're sort of identifying that with this little girl who needed to kind of break out of the environment.
And wasn't able to. The system was keeping her there, keeping her with an abusive parent because it's a woman.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. So you're saying that the system was keeping the girl with her mother and not getting her out of that abusive environment, and that like really upset you. And
right. And I think the system does that because of that woman's gender. Mm-hmm. And because if she was a man, they would remove the child, get the child away from the abusive man that's hitting the child. But because it's a woman hitting the child, we allow the woman to continue to hit the child. That's fucked. I hate that.
Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of an unfair system. Women kind of get away with sort of the abuse, and the system is supporting that, you feel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I feel heard.
Well, then I'll speak to Megan. Yeah, okay. So for me, kind of that brings up just that there's a lot of different blocks to empathy. And, blocks to empathy, can come, in personal relations and, in any kind of a situation. These blocks to empathy can happen in the personal, in the family or in politics too.
So what Tyler shared brought up for you, thinking about how there's blockages to empathy that happen both at the family level, personal and political levels.
Yeah, and I'm noticing one little block to empathy is starting this circle. We need two people to kind of manage it. One person to be doing the groups and someone to kind of give the explanation. And I felt a little overwhelmed with a little bit too many things that I was doing. So that was a little bit of a block to my empathy too, I just realizing. So I'm going to...
Yeah, it was harder for you to be present empathically when you're also managing logistics of like with the technology.
And I sort of identify with what Tyler is saying, that in my family, my parents are caring, but they had their own sort of traumas that they were dealing with, and I just didn't feel heard by either of my parents very well. And so that happens, male, female. I think that these blocks to empathy kind of happen pretty much across the board with, male or female.
So you, can I relate somewhat to what Tyler's saying, because you growing up, you felt like your parents, neither of them really like heard you, or that they were kind of distant. And so as far as your experience, it seems like the blockages to empathy can happen regardless of someone's gender.
Yeah, but I have understanding too, because they went through World War II, their parents, my father's side, they were all, killed. His whole family except for him were killed. And my mother's side, they went through sort of a Russian occupation. They were German. And, all the women were all raped, repeatedly and stuff like that. So they have all their own trauma to deal with. So there's this series of trauma that leads people to, to where they are. And so I try to have understanding for kind of what's behind those blocks.
So like, even though you're acknowledging the impact of the blocks to empathy, you're also wanting to acknowledge where they come from the trauma of like, that on your dad's side of the family, all of the rest of his family was killed, and on your mother's side of the family, all the like women in the family were raped during the German occupation, and recognizing that trauma has effects.
Yeah. It was actually during the Russian occupation. They were German, so they were occupied in the east by the Russians. So,
Russian occupation of Germany on the
right.
east.
So it all ties into, how do we bridge the political divides? I think it's, that it's really the empathy that's going to be the way for people to be able to, talk to each other, share their stories, and be heard by the other side. So I really have hope that it's like dialogues like this, kind of a structured dialogue, a way that we can talk across the political divides to really, address these deeper issues. There's a lot of trauma and, that people have, and, we got to work through this.
So you have hope that through empathy circles and people listening to each other that we can work through that trauma.
Yeah, so I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay. I'll talk to Yuko. I feel a little scared to say this, but I feel like this is like where I need to start. That when this project first started, I was like really excited about it and really hopeful. And then recently, after the last call, maybe the last couple calls, but like I've been getting really worried about whether these empathy circles can actually live up to the hopes that I know I had when I first saw that they were happening. So I'll just pause there to start.
Yes. Yeah. So at first you were really excited about this project and you had a lot of hope with what it could do, but after a couple of calls, you have some concerns that whether this project would support or meet your need for what you are hoping for.
Yeah, and one reason for that is that it started to feel a couple of times, both in circles I've been in and videos I've watched that I wasn't in, that it's just a bunch of people that are centrists or who are becoming more centrist getting together to talk badly about anybody who isn't a centrist. And even if that's not what's actually happening necessarily all the time, I worry that people who are more radical or in their views won't want to participate because of that, and that then we're not really, it's just going to be another bubble of people repeating back, oh, how clever we are for realizing that we shouldn't be extremists. Like kind of self-congratulatory.
I see. So after you experience a couple of dialogues, you realize that there's a stronger voice as a centrist. They kind of stay stronger, and then the radical view gets marginalized, so that you feel sort of disappointed and didn't feel that the radical voice is encouraged.
Yeah, I'm concerned that like there's something about the way that it's structured. I mean, it's that there's certain people who won't want to participate and that we won't have those voices, and that if we want to really find solutions that work for everyone, we need to have all the voices at the table.
I see. So unless the structure has the way to invite different voices, otherwise people won't participate. So we need to have a structure to hold all the voices.
Yeah. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, Claire. Could you hold up fingers? 2 minutes left? Okay. So one thing that I'm interested in doing possibly is, I mean, I have things I could say, but I'm very I find it very easy to empathize with, or at least some of the time, with a wide variety of people. And I also was recently calling myself like an omnist, like I'm on everyone's side. But when I'm in a group that feels like everyone's kind of has one perspective, I want to make sure that another perspective is heard. So I'm thinking about maybe kind of role playing, like not even just saying what I exactly think, but things that I think other people who aren't willing to participate would say, and they're not here. And I want to make sure those other perspectives are heard. So that's something I'm interested in exploring and how I show up to these.
Yes, so you are interested in that something that you consider yourself as an omnist, which means that representing different parts of voices, and you're thinking of doing some kind of role play so that you can represent different perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's probably my time for this.
You have 20 seconds. I'll hold up that when it's 5, okay?
Yeah. Just like to give an example, that means like sometimes if, you know, if I'm in a group where it's a bunch of feminists, which can mean a wide variety of things, I just want to say, I will try to make sure that people are thinking about things that maybe sometimes get left out of that conversation. But if I'm in a group of people that's, you know, more centrist or conservative, I also want to bring up things that they might not have necessarily think about, because we're all kind of in bubbles. So that's a role that I end up feeling called to play out.
Yes, you're taking the role of the people's marginalized voice, the voice that get left out. So you take that role to bring those voices to be heard.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So you choose who you'd like to speak to. If it's nice to speak to someone who hasn't spoken yet, but it's your choice.
Okay, so then Clara.
Can I ask, could someone else time this 5 minutes for us, please?
I'll do it. I've got the timer here.
Thank you.
So what's alive in me right now is the I live in the States right now, but when people talk about politics, mostly sometimes I don't follow because English is my second language. So sometimes I get lost, and before even I participate in the conversation, I feel like I'm not already included. So a lot of times I feel disconnected when people talk about politics.
Okay, so what I just heard is that although you live in the States, English is not your first language. And so sometimes perhaps it gets a little overwhelming, or you get a little lost in the nature of what's being discussed politically, and therefore you don't vote. And that makes you feel a little disconnected from what's going on.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's not that I don't vote. I don't have a right to vote in this country, but so I guess not having the right also feel like I don't have a strong motivation to talk about it sometimes, especially before the election. So that I feel different when I have the right to vote, which is in Japan in my case.
So it's very different for you when you're able to vote in Japan, where you actually grew up, and when you don't have the right to vote, which is the case here in the States. There's a part of you that doesn't really feel like there's a point in showing up in quite the same way, because your voice is not going to get counted.
Yeah. And also I do like more of like a trauma healing. So in one way that I sort of support the different voices is to really see what's the underneath of the pain. So often when people are having sort of confrontational viewpoints, I try to see the pains that they're expressing behind the political views.
So your work is in trauma and healing, and because that's your work, even though you can't vote, you find that you do focus on listening for the root of the conflict or the discord between people with different views to look for the healing that might be possible there.
Yes, yeah. Because when people are motivated to do some social movement from the pain, that's actually make it more, how can I say, they create like an enemy image towards the other person, and then do the action with really angry energy, which doesn't really help to bring people together.
So you've noticed that the pain kind of affects people's energy, and then they might speak more from a place of anger, which affects the ability for either group to empathize with each other or really hear each other.
Yes, yeah. So the way that I would support people is really help them to connect with what's important for them, the underneath value of what they're speaking for, so that they have more chance to be heard and received in a way to connect and bring more doable solution together.
So your motivation is really about creating a capacity for the person to self-empathize, so that they have a better chance of getting what they need communicated to whoever they're talking with.
Yes.
That was time. Thanks.
Again, I'm going to ask someone else to take the 5-minute.
I'll do it.
Thank you. I'm going to choose Megan. Hi, Megan.
I'm listening.
Thank you. So this is my first empathy circle with this group. I have experience with NVC, and it was interesting watching my mind this morning from about 9:30 onwards in terms of was I actually going to show up, and the dialogue, the internal dialogue around how else I might use this time. And I'm really glad I'm here. I'm really glad I let this be the most important thing to do with these 2 hours.
So this morning first you said that you have experience with NVC, and then that this morning from 9:30 on you were having a lot of doubts about whether you were going to participate, but you're really glad that you did choose to make this a priority.
Yeah, almost. It wasn't just doubts. It was just watching my mind have a conversation around how else I could spend those 2 hours. Like, so evaluating this process of sort of evaluating what's the most way to use my time.
Yeah, like weighing out if there was something else that you could do that would better meet your needs, or
yeah, I guess so. But then I'd have to define my needs. So I guess my needs are to help with healing. And so that's why I'm glad I'm here, because I know that empathy, as I see it and experience it, when it's happening, helps me to have less emotional reactions. It kind of presses pause on my emotional charge on things. And it just feels really important to me to be able to hear other people, including family members, and just be with them, and to not make it about me, like to be able to just be with them and hear them as if what they're saying is a brand new thing.
So for you, a priority is to help with healing, and empathy helps you with that, because when you're coming from a place of empathy, then you notice you have less reactivity, and then it's easier to hear people, like including family members, and be present with them.
Thank you. I saw the film Vice last night, which is about Dick Cheney and the administration at that time when he was vice president. And this is kind of going off to the side a bit, but I do wonder how on earth one can bring, whether empathy can really work in an environment where the motivation looks so self-serving and disconnected from the human experience.
So after watching this video last night, you're questioning whether empathy can actually be helpful in what you'd like to see or achieve in the world, when in a situation where one or more people seem so just selfish and greedy and disconnected from care for humanity.
Yeah, I just I know people who are really good at empathy can make a difference. I guess my question is, how do we reach those people, which is something Edwin has referred to. Like, how do we reach the people that have such influence on what happens next politically?
So you do feel hopeful about empathy being helpful, but you're not sure how to be most strategic, I guess, in reaching the people who have the most influence and offering empathy to those people and encouraging empathy from those people.
Yeah, and I feel so, it's like it fills me with love and hope, the idea that that might be possible at some point, you know, that if you can picture it, it's possible. The question is the gaps between picturing it and actually being in a room together in real time. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll just reflect that last part, that there's like a gap between imagining it and then it actually happening. And you're wondering, I think, how to bridge that gap.
And I feel hopeful about it.
You feel hopeful about it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So I'll take over the timing again.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to talk to Edwin. If that works for you.
Yep.
And I would like to kind of say what I'd like to kind of role play somebody that I have in mind. I don't remember if it was when we were on a call live or if it was a recording I watched, but I heard you talking about an event in Berkeley where people who had questions or comments were invited to line up, and that anyone who was a woman or a person of color was invited to go first. And I heard that you felt uncomfortable with that or shocked, and I would like to role play for a moment somebody who was involved in making the decision to organize it that way.
Okay, so you would have seen a video, one of the circles where I talked about an event that I went to, and as a male I was asked to stand at the end of the line, and you want to speak to that, but do a role play of being one of the organizers of that event.
Yeah. And so from that, I will say, and so I'm speaking from what I imagine that person, one of those organizers, might say, that I'm just really shocked that you don't see that this isn't about dehumanizing white guys, but it's about finding balance. And that women, and from my perspective, it seems like women and people of color are often talked over, silenced, ignored, don't have influence. And we're not trying to make women and people of color more important, but we're trying to bring balance.
So you'd like to explain that in this situation that you're just trying to create a sense of balance, that people of color, women get talked over, and this is your attempt at creating balance.
Yes. And that feeling that you had when you were asked to go to the back of the line, I think that's a feeling that the people that we invited to come to the front of the line feel a lot of the time, even though it's not explicit. It's something that people feel a lot of the time, like that they're being shunted to the back of the line or the end of the speakers list.
So the people who are being brought to the front of the line, the feeling of being sent to the back of the line is what they're experiencing a lot of the time themselves. That's kind of what their experience is.
Yes. And also, in a way, me as one of the organizers of this event, I'm trying to do the same thing you're trying to do here. I'm trying to get more voices at the table. I'm trying to help people be heard that aren't being heard.
Yeah, so you just like to convey that your intention is for more voices to be heard, and you're saying that is the same intention that we have here with in the empathy circle.
Yes. And I would like more empathy, I guess. I would hope that having had that experience that you've had, that where you didn't enjoy being asked to go to the back of the line, that you could have empathy for other people who might feel like that's what's happening to them, like all the time.
So you would like me to have empathy for those people who are at the end of being moved to the front of the line because they're experiencing being sent to the end of the line, and you would like me to have empathy for them and their experience.
Yes. And while I don't have statistics in my pocket currently, I do think that there's a lot of evidence to show that as far as who has influence in this world, in the United States, a lot of legislative bodies, corporations, like Board of Governors or whatever, that the statistics show that the people that were invited to move to the front of the line at that event are not represented proportionally to population, even though there might be some exceptions in some places.
Mm-hmm. So you would just kind of statistically, there's statistic corroboration for your view that these are the people who are statistically not really having their voices heard. So that's why you're wanting to move them to the front of the line so that their voices can be heard.
Okay, I think you unfroze.
Okay.
I don't know how I am on time.
That was 5 minutes.
Okay.
Looks like.
I'll stop there then.
Then I'll speak to Tyler.
Listening.
Yeah, so for me, this argument of there's different aspects. One is I think it is important to empathize with everyone. So the sense of trying to empathize with the people who are kind of these people that wanted me to go to the end of the line, I think that there's, something I'd like to get better at, is empathizing with what their point of view is.
I hear you saying that you understand the value of empathizing in the people that feel that they're being pushed to the back of the line, and you want to get better at that. Am I quiet?
No, to the organizers, empathize with the people that were organizing that event and wanted me to go to the end of the line. So I do want to have empathy for them, but empathy doesn't mean agreement. So I think it's good to understand where they're coming from, and I appreciate Megan, sharing that perspective, but it doesn't mean, and trying to understand it, but it doesn't mean that I would agree with it.
Okay. I hear you saying that, yeah, that you do value the action of empathizing with them, but empathizing does not mean you agree with the decision. And so, yeah, you want to express that you have disagreement while you are still empathizing.
Right. And for me, was like a church. So this was like a progressive church, and a lot of the leaders from the churches in the Berkeley area were there. And I was quite surprised by it. So we're talking about, sort of religious organizations kind of being involved in this, which was a real surprise to me.
Yeah, I heard you saying that at the Berkeley event, it was essentially a bunch of churches getting together, and at this religious event, this is where this happened. And so that's part of why it was shocking to you.
And I would love to have had the organizer of this event be in an empathy circle so we could talk about this. And I did reach out to the right-wing organizer who was organizing the event, and it was Amber Cummings, and she said that she would be willing to do an empathy circle with counter demonstrators. And then I reached out to the specific person, Nicola Torbett, who was the organizer, who created this event, and said, go to the end of the line. I said, would you do an empathy circle with Amber Cummings? She's willing to do an empathy circle. And she said, no, I'm too busy. So they were in. This was pretty frustrating to me, because it's like, you're organizing, doing all this, creating all these counter demonstrations, and they wouldn't be willing to talk with the organizer on the right. So that was very frustrating to me.
Okay, I hear you saying that around this event, you were trying to get the organizers of both opposing sides to participate in an empathy circle, and you couldn't make that happen, and that was really frustrating.
I couldn't get the person on the left to take part.
You couldn't get the person on the left to take part.
The person on the right was willing to do it.
Sure, of course.
So if you just reflect that part back.
Right, the person on the left, you're saying that the person on the left wouldn't participate, but the person on the right was willing.
Yeah, so
that was frustrating. That was particularly frustrating.
Yeah, and so it's so I appreciate Megan's kind of concerns about the empathy circle process, and I really appreciate kind of hearing concerns, because I want to see how do we improve the process. And it's, how do we have, you can only bring in so many voices, into a circle. Ideally it's like 4 people, but how do we bring in kind of more voices is a challenge.
I hear you saying that you were just reflecting what Megan was saying about bringing in more voices, and you were reflecting on how difficult that is when you only have so many seats.
Yeah. And I do really try to kind of reach out to all the different sides, because I really do want those extremes. But to begin with, just kind of getting the ball rolling, I think we just need to get experience, get, a cadre of facilitators together, and then we can sort of expand. So I do really want to get those extremes, together, have the organizers of one side and the counter protesters, get them together. And, get this, I love it. In fact, that's where the energy is. That's where the fun is trying, fun. It's where the energy, it is enjoyable. There's an energy and there's a liveliness, and, I really appreciate that. So I do really try to bring those sides together. So that's my 5 minutes.
I'll just reflect that last thing. I heard you saying that you think that by growing the groups and having more smaller groups and kind of turning it into a larger modular thing, that then that'll be an opportunity to get more of those extremes in, because getting the extreme opinions in is where the actual action takes place.
Yeah, a lot of energy. Yeah, there's just energy. So yeah, I feel heard. Thank you. That was my time.
Okay. Well, I'd really like to talk to Megan, but I feel like I'm leaving everybody else out if I do that. Is that all right?
It's your choice that you want to speak to.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to Megan.
I'm listening.
Okay. I read a lot of Jordan Peterson, and so I've been reading a lot of Russian literature, in particular Dostoevsky and Solzhenitsyn. And Solzhenitsyn was involved in Stalinist occupation, Russian side of Germany, interestingly enough, Edwin. And the parallel that I see between the logic being used by the Soviets to send people to the Gulag and the logic being used to say, it is okay for me to oppress you and discriminate against you based on the color of your skin and your gender, it's the same twisted logic to come to an evil conclusion. White men to the back. Based on your gender and your skin color. Evil is evil. It does not matter. If it feels like you're evening things up, evil is evil.
So I'm hearing that you've been reading a lot about someone from Jordan Peterson, about the history with Russia and the occupation and Germany, history of Stalinism, and that you're feeling really worried that right now the same logic that's being used to come up with ideas like letting certain people based on gender, skin color speak first at an event is going to lead to similar outcomes as
it's not about the putting the people first. It's about putting someone last.
So you're not really concerned about
it's not about it's unbecome about promoting someone, and it's become about pushing someone down, and that switch is huge.
So to you, the concern isn't about who's being promoted so much as if someone's being put down or put to the back.
Yes.
That's a really important difference to you.
Right. And when I see that happening, that in any direction, I believe is evil. That you're choosing that someone is a bad person or doesn't deserve to be listened to or has less of an opinion because of their skin color, their gender, or even who they choose to love.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. Yeah, that makes sense. And it shouldn't be done in any direction.
Yeah. So to you, you don't think it should be done in any direction to devalue someone, a person or their voice, what they have to say based on their skin color, their gender, or who they love.
Yes. And I currently see the modern, what's taking place. I see messages coming from the left that are very clearly and loudly saying, you deserve to be oppressed. You deserve to be held down. And if you do not go along with this, we will call you a racist and we will call you a sexist. The reason that we know you deserve this is because of your race and your sex. I didn't do anything. I don't deserve this. I just showed up here. I was born this way, just like everybody else. I'm trying to get along just like everybody else. Why do I have to go to the back line?
Yeah. So you're hearing some very loud voices in the public discourse in the US that say, because of who you are, because you're a white male, that you automatically deserve to go to the back of the line, that your opinion matters less. And that it's really painful because you're just like, I just showed up this way. I didn't choose my sex or my skin color. And it basically really sucks and it's scary.
Yeah. And to hear people cheering that on, that we want more of that, that's a good thing. The history argument I've heard multiple times that there is a past of this. And so we're going to even this up in the present. I'm going to make a very rude analogy now. But the analogy that I was making, because I was dealing with comics, mind you, was if we had a video of a whole bunch of people of your identity group raping one straight white man, how much do I get to rape you in the ass to even that up? And the answer is none. You don't get to do that. That's not how it works. And that's the logic I see translating.
Basically, what you're saying, two wrongs don't make a right. That if something horrible happens to somebody, it doesn't make it better to then do that horrible thing. A little bit more
of that evil in the present does not even it out in the future. You're not making it better by introducing more bad stuff in the present. Yeah. I feel heard. Thank you.
Basically, two wrongs don't make a right, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. All right. I will Claire. Oh, wait, did I mute myself? No, I didn't.
You're still here.
I'll speak to Claire this time.
Okay, Edwin, would you take over the timing, please? Okay, I'm listening.
So I just need a couple of seconds. I guess what I want to say first of all is kind of immediate response to what Tyler was saying, which is that I'm in agreement that in many cases in certain circles that have gained a lot of traction right now, it has gone in a bad direction as far as assuming the worst of people based on something that they can't control. People whose identities have historically been the same as people in positions of power and people in positions of oppressors, but that doesn't mean that everyone with that identity that they can't help is the same. And I'm worried about it. I'm very worried about it. And I've been increasingly alienated from people who I thought were my allies within the activist community because of the directions that has gone in. That being said, I also think that we need to do something like the healing around. Actually, I'll pause there and then.
Okay. Yeah, I hope I do this justice. I think what I heard you say, and please correct me if I missed anything here, is that you actually agreed with a lot of Tyler's concerns with the idea of, in the attempts to do restorative justice, that more alienation is actually being created instead of healing. And
or more trauma.
And that more trauma is actually being generated in unsuccessful attempts to create balance, historical balance.
Yeah. That being said, it's like we can't, okay, this is really cliche, but I don't think we can throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because even though, well, for one, like I said earlier, feminism means a lot of things. There's a lot of different people who consider themselves feminists and believe a lot of different things, some of which I'm very much not in agreement with across a wide variety of beliefs. But there are certain like core things like that feminism has promoted, like the right to have an abortion, the right to choose when and if you have children, you know, the right to not be raped, including maybe by a husband, like even the idea of marital rape being a thing, that your husband, if you marry a man, doesn't have the right to just have sex with you whenever he wants, you know, many other things that even though feminism as a whole, let's say, has become extremely problematic, I also feel like it's the only thing standing between me, and I think that a lot of people feel like it's potentially the only thing standing between me and becoming like a baby making sex slave in like this dystopian future that I have seen plenty of people who I think are more conservative the way that they talk about women, and it is scary.
So although you recognize and acknowledge and appreciate that there are things within feminism, because feminism is such a broad range of principles, depending on who's holding it. So that unnerves you a bit because there are elements of feminism that you do not agree with. But at the same time, you recognize and you're stating that your safety and your freedom to choose for yourself, your freedom from the assumption that somebody can rape you legally and get away with it, or that someone can make you reproduce because they say so, like that, things like that are the only shield between you and that is feminism. And so there are elements of feminism that make you feel safe in the world, and then there are elements of feminism that you feel contradict some of your own principles and beliefs.
Yes. Yeah. And it's not monolithic at all. How am I doing on time, Edwin? I'm trying to see if you're holding up fingers or something.
That was 5, yeah. Oh,
okay.
But I guess you, what was it? Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's my turn to choose.
Yeah, and I'll keep time for you too.
Thank you. I'm going to speak to Tyler. Oh, thank you.
I'm listening.
There's something very reassuring about those words, "I'm listening." I appreciate hearing that. Thank you. I'm noticing that some of the ways that I hear Tyler talking, I don't know whether to address you as Tyler or talk about you, Tyler, as a third person when I'm referring to something you've said. Is there guidance on that?
You can go straight at me, right?
Whatever you want to say. You can just reflect back her confusion, Tyler.
Yeah. Yeah, Claire's saying she's not sure how to, when she's addressing me and I'm having to reflect back whether she can address me in the first person or the third.
Totally your choice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting because there's a part of me that enjoys being provocative as well. And I recognize, or I feel like I recognize that in you, Tyler. And I think it would be interesting to have a dialogue with you. And I was curious, I noticed in myself a curiosity that the first chance you had to speak in the main room was when, and I can't remember her name, but I don't mind that, the lady from England.
Joy.
Okay, but like I said, I don't mind. I don't need her name.
Yeah.
So I wasn't asking for it. That she mentioned something about herself that had value for her, which was that she was a feminist. And I noticed that it kind of bothered me a bit that in that first round of us opening up ourselves and introducing ourselves, that it felt important to you to make that provocative, like to challenge it right off the bat.
I hear you saying that it made you uncomfortable that in that first round, I think I know what you're referring to, that I made a confrontational statement in the initial introductions and you notice that you have a tendency towards being confrontational, and you can see that in me, that I have a tendency towards being confrontational, and it makes you uncomfortable. Did I get it?
Close. Yeah, close enough, I think. I think I said provocative.
Provocative, okay.
I think there's a subtle difference. I can be confrontational, but in this case I was referring to being provocative because I think it can generate interesting dialogue.
Yeah. Okay, so in this case, you're referring to provocative and not confrontational. You're defining the difference between the two.
Right, because I think it can make interesting dialogue.
Because it can make interesting dialogue, yes. Okay.
Yeah. And I really appreciate what I'm witnessing. So, for instance, with Megan doing a role play with Edwin, I mean, it's so complicated. You know, I hear and relate to both the strongest perspectives that were being shared. And I'm aware that it does seem to me, and it may have been the way it's held, who knows, I wasn't there. But the fact that it costs someone a feeling of belongingness to give someone else a feeling of belongingness, this idea that it must be taken away from one person in order to give it to another, this idea of a person going to the back of a line in order for someone else to feel like there was a restorative justice there. You know, I've listened to a lot of different discussions around equality this year in very close quarters. And I guess I'm having a lot of empathy for the fact that it's really fucking complicated. Like, to do good work, to do restorative justice in a way that doesn't just create more wounding.
Okay, that was a lot.
Sorry.
I hear you saying that with Megan's role play, and then hearing my response, you're realizing that you do have the ability to empathize with both sides, and that this is very difficult. And I feel like I'm missing stuff. I feel like I'm missing a lot.
I think perhaps the thing that's most significant to me is I just have a deep appreciation for how complex restorative justice work is. Because with our wounding, thank you, Edwin, with our wounding, and the idea of restoring healing, how hard it is to do that without creating more wounding.
Yeah. So I hear you saying that, yeah, it's very difficult to do the restorative healing without causing more trauma and more pain and continuing the cycle. And you're thinking about how to stop the cycle, how to put the brakes on the traumatizing.
Yes, that feels miraculous, but yes. Thank you. You're heard.
All right. Thank you, Claire. I'm going to speak to Yuko. Sorry. I don't know why I added an I in there. I think I would like to piggyback on what Claire was saying about healing and the cycles, and the fact that my mother was not just physically abused by her father, and I've never gotten confirmation of this, but I'm pretty sure she was raped. I don't know where, who, when. I don't know what the circumstances were, but she has very clear trauma around her sexuality. And I don't think she even realized what she was doing to me, or that she was traumatizing me.
Yes.
And
so you know the fact that your mother was raped, and then she has a huge trauma that's probably not to notice, and she doesn't even know that she traumatized you by abusing you.
Yeah. And I don't know, I'm wondering the same thing as Claire on how do we put the brakes on this and make it a restorative and healing thing for everyone. That, you're talking about, Megan was talking about feeling like feminism was the only thing between her and this nightmare. And I feel like there's nothing between me and the nightmare. That there's nothing to protect me. You're a big, strong man. You handle your fucking self. Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about your feelings. Nobody cares about what's going on with you. You have hurt, you have trauma, whatever. Go deal with it on your own, man. We don't care about you. That's what I hear. I feel alone. I feel, completely alone.
Yeah, you're feeling alone. You have no support and protection because of your racial background, being male, that you don't have any protection as far as how you move towards the restorative dialogue.
Well, yeah. And that I think in our society, we look at traumatized and wounded and hurt men as weak and pathetic. We don't value them. I call it the void. If you're not productive, you don't have a job. If you're not of value in social communities, if you're not any of those things, that's why the male homeless population is so massive, because you handle your problems. You're a big, strong, scary man, and you handle it. And it doesn't feel like there's care or support for men.
Yeah, I'm hearing the big hopelessness and concern that in this society there's no support for white male, and there are so many
not even white,
homeless
men. That, like, our society, I've been reading a lot of men's rights activism literature. And these guys aren't I've got a career and I work and I make money, I'm okay. Some of these guys have some really gut-wrenching stories, and they're humans too. And men's rights activists get treated like they're anti-female, and I think that's because feminism has become anti-male. And so when you say men's rights activism, they assume you're anti-female. And I don't think that's the case. I think these men are hurt, and they're trying to fix the same pain everybody else is trying to fix.
Yeah, so you're really hoping to have more support for the man who needs the support, and those movements doesn't mean that they're anti-feminism. They're just trying to support the man who needs more support, and they're in pain.
Yeah. And that we as a society do kind of turn our backs on them. And I think that's a place where we are shorting men, and where feminism is overshadowing it, where it's taking away from that conversation. We can't have that conversation because anything that goes to men is going away from women, and we can't do that. And like, that's not actually what's happening. It's an unfair twist.
Yeah, so there is a feeling of, I guess, I don't know, you didn't say that, but I'm sensing your sadness because the feminist movement sort of covers the support and the issue with man needs support.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you, Yuko.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. I guess I will choose Edwin.
Okay.
I'm timing.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. What I'm noticing in me right now is some constriction in me, that I feel some tightness in my chest and solar plex area.
So you're just feeling into how you feel, and you're feeling some tightness in your chest and the solar plexus, just sort of noticing that tightness.
And this is my edge to be in this kind of conversation, that I want to be present with one another, but sometimes my body shuts down and I don't feel the warm resonance in me, and my body just starts protecting myself.
So you're noticing your body, that you would like sort of a warm resonance, and to protect yourself, your body starts tightening up or closing off. And that's sort of an edge for you.
Yes, and at the same time, I so long for the connection where I can really listen and find the resonance in whoever speaking for the pain or the strong voice.
So you sort of long for a sense of for connection and hearing others and kind of being present with the pain that's there. So you have sort of a longing for having that type of presence.
Yes, and that's one of my challenge, that I'm learning a lot being in this group, and appreciating one, especially the first round, that I found a lot of frozenness in me that I couldn't really follow. So I felt shut down and disconnected. But as I was hearing other people reflecting and trying to empathize, my body started to little bit relaxed on the second round, which was really helpful. I could hear little by little.
So you're just noticing how your body felt. Like when we first started off, you felt some tension. And as you're hearing people share and the empathy, you're noticing that in the second round, third round, you're noticing your body start to relax a little bit and be a little bit more open, and you're just sort of noticing those changes.
Yes, yeah. So I feel hopeful that the first round I didn't feel the hope because I was scared. I didn't even want to speak. So that after second round, I personally feel noticing that people are calmer, like starting more connected as they speak, and that's helped my body to feel relaxed and feel safe in this group.
So at first you're really kind of questioning even being here, because just noticing the tension, and as people started speaking, you're starting to feel more relaxed and more hopeful. You're feeling kind of scared or before and not very hopeful, but now you're starting to, your hopefulness is growing.
Yes, yes. And by saying that, I noticed that when people feel that they are heard and they're safe to speak for their voices, and then their nervous system changes, and then their voice changes. It becomes less, there's less tension and confrontational. So that helped me to relax.
Mm-hmm. So you're noticing that when people start feeling heard, that their voice becomes less tense, and when you're noticing this, that you're becoming more relaxed by seeing others kind of get heard, be empathized with, and
yeah. Thank you.
Okay, then I'll speak to Claire. And I can keep time too. I got a good clock here.
Okay.
I'm also having to keep a little look at the rooms and kind of keep track of other things. So it kind of distracts me a little bit. And for example, I noticed that Corey has dropped in and out a couple of times. I've had to, put her back into the room. She might be having a bad connection or something. So there's a little bit of distraction there.
You're experiencing some distraction, back to this logistical piece of trying to be present, to empathize, and at the same time having that responsibility. I'm wondering what's going on for some of the other participants.
Yeah.
Help keep them engaged in the process also.
Yep. And so there's a little bit of organizational stuff. I'm going to need more support, I think, for future circles, especially when they get larger like this. There was only a couple had signed up. It looked like only 4 people were going to show up. Then we had the whole big group, and that. So I'm going to definitely have to have more support for the logistics of managing the rooms and everything.
Yeah. So you're definitely looking for more support at this point, because you were rather surprised by how many people said they were coming, and then suddenly how many people there were, and then it's like, oh my God, I'm responsible for the logistics of all this to make it work.
Pleasantly surprised. It's like, yay, people are getting involved.
I'm slightly traumatized.
And I'm glad we have a couple of conservatives too, Tyler and David too, getting that variety of perspectives that Megan's talking about, because I really want that too, that we have, broader, variety of voices.
So you're celebrating, in a way, that there is this diversity, because that's where we're going to learn more about how to be empathic with each other.
Yeah, and that comes back to the story of in the church of being sent to the back of the line, or potentially, I wasn't actually, but it was stated that you could be moved to the end of the line, or somebody could be put in front of you. That's sort of going to your idea of restorative justice. That I think it's really the way forward is not to try to even the scales, like past wrongs, but to have these dialogues, that mutual empathy is sort of the way forward. And that means that everybody has an equal voice, that we need to model what we want. It's like the means are the end, so that we need to model the society that we want. And I see the empathy circle as sort of a basic model of that. Everybody has an equal voice. We just keep at it, until we kind of work things out. And so I just stop there.
So it sounds like you're comparing models in the sense of, if you look at the church model, where in a way, the threat was that some people were going to get pushed to the back of the line and not have their voice included. For you, that feels like it's less likely to create the kind of healing, societal healing, that you think the empathy circles can create, and that your wish is to see empathy circles really be prioritized as a way to create the restorative justice.
Yeah. And I'm not even for restorative justice. I've given up on the whole notion of justice. So I call it restorative empathy. That for me, the whole justice has sort of been taken over by, identity politics and even the notion of justice, of judgment. It's based on the scales, on judgment. So that's not empathic. It's like, to begin with, even the whole court system, the whole justice framework seems to have so many problems. I've just given up on the notion of justice.
So for you, there's a real radical shift needed to create societal healing, which is based on empathy and this idea of restorative justice, because restorative justice kind of never ends. Like, how do you compare the different kinds of suffering and then balance those out? That doesn't seem to make sense to you, not even in the legal system. Like, the whole thing seems like it needs to transform into something more inclusive and more present tense.
Yeah, we need a whole different framing around what I call a culture of empathy. So that we want to have every voice matter, a container for hearing every voice. And if there's a break, it's restorative empathy. It's like we want to bring people back into an empathic, mutual connection. So that's sort of my vision.
So your vision really centers around empathy. Empathy is kind of like the crux of all the healing. So in a way, forget restoration and focusing more on including all the voices, everyone being welcomed, everyone having this equal value, everyone's voice and presence having equal importance to the healing process.
I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll keep time too for you.
Oh, it's me again, right?
Yep.
It's just still getting the hang of this. I'm going to choose Edwin.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to tune in for a second. I feel like I'm being reminded in today's sharing, in today's call, that when I focus on listening, I suffer less.
So you're just noticing in this call that if you just focus on listening, that you just feel less suffering.
Yeah. And I actually get what I want, which is intimacy with other people. I get that. I get there's a sweetness to that for me of sharing close space with others, even though, I don't know, even though we're strangers.
Mm-hmm. So you're noticing with this listening that we're doing here, we're creating a sense of closeness and there's a sweetness to it.
Yes, yes. And there is something that I forgot to mention to Tyler, so I'll mention it to you, knowing that Tyler is hearing this. And it was something that happened near the beginning, or whenever, I can't remember specifically when it was, but I recall that somebody, I think in the breakout room, was sharing, and I noticed in my peripheral vision that Tyler was having a reaction to what was being shared, and an opinion, a very strong opinion, and was actually speaking into his room even though he's muted. And I found myself wondering, is that supportive of empathy? Is that supportive of people being able to share and feel like they're not going to get judged before they've really had a chance to discover for themselves what they're talking about, like what's going on for them?
Oh, okay. So here in the room, one person is speaking, but someone can sort of speak into the room through their body language. And you're just kind of questioning if that speaking into the room through body language is really supportive of empathy, of listening and empathy.
Yeah, and it maybe there are different rules, but I know that some of the things that are really challenging were challenging when I was first even learning about different ways of listening and being present, is that, even nodding, it's not, it's like disencouraged in certain systems. And so there's a part of me that enjoys that sort of aliveness, again, because it's something I resonate with and it's real. So I guess my question is it just too polite, or is it important to stay neutral, regardless of if you're the chosen listener, but you're actually still part of the circle?
Yeah, so you're just kind of questioning and wondering about kind of the responses, the nonverbal responses, and do you just be sort of totally neutral, no sign, no body language, no nothing, just listening? Or what is the relationship of, the different body movements that people are doing? And just kind of curious about what's the role there.
I appreciate that. That feels really accurate. Yeah, because I really don't know. And I'm enjoying the fact that I can actually explore that question with you all, because I'm here to learn what works. I want to find out what works, and I know sometimes I feel restricted by the politeness of neutrality, but I also don't want to go too far the other way, where we automatically censor ourselves to make sure that we're safe.
Yeah, so you're just kind of wondering about that, and you don't want to censor yourself just for safety, and you're just kind of curious, about what, the role there and what to do.
And the censoring can be on both sides, censoring myself as a speaker or censoring myself as a listener.
Yeah, so you can censor yourself speaking, being open and just censoring, or as a listener, you can censor yourself as well, not do body language or what have you.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay, then I'll speak to Megan.
And I'll time.
Okay, I'm listening.
So I'm really appreciating this. I'm getting each time I get a bit more insight about the nature, about empathy circles. How do we, deepen them? How do we evolve them? So what Claire was saying, seeing people's body language and so forth, that's interesting thought, to look at.
So each time that you do an empathy circle, you're getting more insight into all the dynamics at play, like the possible effects of body language of those who aren't talking.
Yeah.
And wanting to incorporate that into continuing to work on the project. Yeah,
and I feel heard with that, and we have 4 minutes until we have to close the circle. So it's your turn for 4 minutes.
Okay, I will speak to Tyler.
Listening. Oops, sorry.
All right, so this is what was coming to me is, there's a lot of things I want to say, but just that I want radical empathy, by which I mean radical, like I said at the beginning, like getting to the root of things. I think empathy can help us get to the root of things. And in the moments in which I feel safer and calmer, I want to empathize with the people out there who believe that rape should be legal, which is a thing that exists. I want to empathize with it because I feel like if I understand where that's coming from, what is the humanity there, that it will somehow be less scary, and it will help me try to find solutions to a world where maybe people can find a better way to meet their needs than doing that. And just like I want to empathize with even the people I see as who are either doing or wanting to do things that are really harmful. I also hope that others here can that we can somehow support each other to feel safe enough to empathize with those that are doing something else that is experienced as harmful, like potentially being told to go to the back of the line of speakers, which also kind of feels like it doesn't come. Okay, I'll stop. Yeah.
If you want, you can finish. Okay. I heard
yeah,
you
go ahead.
saying. I'll do that bit, and then you can. I heard you saying that you're reflecting back on radical. Why you use the word radical, getting to the root of things, and that you're essentially doubling down on radical empathy. That you're pushing yourself to even be able to empathize with somebody who openly thinks that it should be legal for them to rape people, to rape women specifically, and that you think that there is a healing restorative power if you can get there where you can empathize and understand that, then you can understand how to fix that situation, how to remedy it.
Mm-hmm. And the other part I was saying that I hope we can all kind of support each other to be able to do that, to empathize with the people that we're most scared of, I guess.
Okay. I hear you saying that, that the other part of that is you want everybody to be able to empathize with the people that they're most frightened of.
That being said, I think it can actually be really traumatic to try to force someone to empathize with someone that they're scared of. And so I'm not suggesting, and I don't want to be a part of anything that is about forced empathy, because I think that can actually be traumatic.
And you're saying that forced empathy can be counterproductive and actually traumatic, and you don't want to force anyone. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. And that what helps me want to empathize is when I feel safer and trusting that I will, also be heard, or that people have my back in some way, as far as safety goes. So I want us to help each other with that.
You feel better at empathizing when you feel safer and more comfortable and more able to share, and you think that cultivating that environment for everybody is the way forward. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that, we're gonna close the room and
can I just say thank you to everybody really quick?
Yeah.
Like I know I come off hot. I know I have my issues. I feel very listened to and very empathized with, and this is therapeutic for me. And so thank you for tolerating all my bristleness and annoyingness. Thank you.
And I want to second that too. Feel a lot of gratitude for everyone, for just being present and listening and sticking with it. Okay, so you'll see something to return to the main screen, and you can click on that, or yeah. Okay, I think everybody's popping in. It should be a couple more. Everybody's got a minute to